Oh, hello there. Welcome to episode 19 of Weekly Lit. We're dealing with Robert Frost, part one, and football. So I'm going to begin with an excerpt right here. Not an excerpt, just a reading. Nothing Gold Can Stay by Robert Frost. This is what led me to start with Robert Frost tonight for this week's episode. Nothing gold can stay. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down today, nothing gold can stay. It's an appropriate poem for this time of year. The season's changing, and what a gem of a poem by Robert Frost. You can see how he condenses what is first a little bit of melancholy and maybe regret about the passage of time, and includes three different examples: the green leaf, summer's hue, or spring turning to summer. The fall, the Garden of Eden, that is in the last few lines there. So Eden sank to grief, and then finally, so dawn goes down today, nothing gold can stay. So certainly talking about the changes and cycles that are in life. But on, I guess, a more upbeat note, all of those things are cyclical. Maybe not Eden, but with the dawn turning into the day and the leaf spring turning to summer. When you step back and appreciate the seasonality of things, it's just interesting to see how much he condensed into that very short poem. And, Robert Frost, I think, is pretty clearly America's favorite poet. His poem, The Road Not Taken, was chosen as America's favorite poem, although often misunderstood. And we'll get to that poem in a little bit here. But he had a depth to him that I think is sometimes, as funny as it is to say, underappreciated in his techniques and themes. For instance, nothing gold can stay. I already talked about the brevity of it, but there's alliteration. Her hardest hue to hold, and dawn goes down today. Very simple and yet effective rhyming, and like I said, just what a gem of a poem. And then you couple that with the themes that are being discussed in there, and you can see why he's still studied and a favorite. Now, we're going to change things up a little bit. I titled this as part one because we're going to have a part two, maybe a couple of episodes down the road, and revisit Robert Frost. So the homework for anybody who wants to partake is to read Robert Frost's poem Directive that he wrote in, I believe it was 1943, toward the later part of his career, and one of his best, possibly his best, and see what we get out of it before we discuss it. And we'll come back to that in a couple of episodes. We're going to have an intervening episode, probably on Dune and the fiction of Frank Herbert, in a little discussion of the movie, since that's relatively timely. And and then there is the lost episode 17, which needs to be found, that will perhaps pop up somewhere here, since we jumped from 16 to 18. So be looking out for the lost episode. And that's just a little preview. So homework assignment, again, if you care to discuss it or think about it, and you can get on weeklylit@gmail.com, put comments below, but read Directive by Robert Frost, and we'll revisit that in the next couple episodes, or in a couple of episodes. Now, everybody's probably familiar with Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening, another great one by Robert Frost. But probably, I can't say probably, it's definitely his most famous poem, and the one that is America's favorite, and probably America's most misunderstood, which we'll get to, is The Road Not Taken. And I will also show how it affects football when we get to after we read the poem. So first off, of course, let's just read through it. It's a classic, The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves, no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So first, I'd like to talk about the misunderstanding of that. And I think something that can be overlooked, typically it's presented as sort of a statement of rebellion. I think at a quick reading or a quick listen, it makes one believe that the road less traveled by, again in the penultimate sentence, means that you have to blaze your own trail, be a rebel, and that has made all the difference. But upon close reading, I don't think that's really what the poem is doing. And so there's certainly some regret evident in the title. And again, people sometimes think the title is The Road Less Traveled, and the title is The Road Not Taken. So The Road Not Taken, just that those four words, they sound like regret. The Road Not Taken. It's a poem about decisions, and it's talking about roads, not a path, but roads, places where people have traveled, and man has gone, and woman. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. So, there's an immediate feeling of regret of I can't be in two places at once. I could not be one person and still follow two roads and be one traveler. So here's one key that I like. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other. So he studied one for quite a long time. This is where I'm going to tie it into football, because the tie-in with football is The Road Not Taken. You can look at a football game, you can look at anything this way, but first we're going to tie it to football because tackle football is one of man's greatest achievements. Along with the U.S. Constitution, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and Hamlet, not necessarily in that order. So anyway, with tackle football, American football, when does this come into play? The road not taken. This comes into play when you're in a close game or a team is making a comeback and they're down by more than one score, and you have to make a decision as to whether to go for a 2-point conversion. And by the way, if you If you disagree with me about football being one of man's greatest achievements, please contact me immediately to set up a private discussion on that matter, because it should be obvious. But anyway, if you need input on that, I'm willing to provide that. So we're in the fourth quarter, down by more than one score, and the question is whether you go for two or whether you kick a field goal. However it may come about. Let's say you're down by 11 points, so you need a field goal and a score with a 2-point conversion. Which do you do first? And some people think intuitively and incorrectly, well, get the touchdown first, and if you know you're going to have to go for two, do it up front. That way you will know whether you need to make that, and that way if you don't make it, you know that you may be out of luck. That would be in an instance when you're down by, say, 16 or something like that, or I'm not describing it very well. But anyway, the better decision to do is to kick the field goal first, get the points that you know you need, and prolong the game. In other words, you look down one road, but then you take the other road because you're going to say, well, we don't know if we're going to make that 2-point conversion, so let's put off that decision until the very end, until we're forced to make it, because as long as the decision is open, you haven't committed to that, and you've kept all of your paths open. So trust me, statistically it works out that way, and it works out that way in practice in football. Psychologically, it makes more sense too. But anyway, Robert Frost was onto something. So getting back to the poem after that, after going down that road, less traveled, the other key to this poem, I think, just briefly, is that the last paragraph starts with a prospective approach. In other words, he's not looking back, talking about what road he took. He's looking ahead. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. So he hasn't completed the trip at this point. This is, I think, the part that people overlook. I shall be telling this with a sigh, meaning he knows he's going to have regret, regardless of which one he takes. Somewhere ages and ages hence, 2 roads diverge in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So this isn't a braggart saying, hey, I took this, rough path, and that made all the difference. Now, this is perspective. It's saying, I will probably have regrets. That's where the sigh comes in. I think it depends on how you interpret the sigh, but I think it's pretty clearly it means some sort of either melancholia or a little bit of regret, or maybe just resignation, that no matter what you choose, you are foregoing the other choices. And so not quite as positive as many may take it. But that's just my opinion. Tell me what you think by putting something in the comments or shooting me an email. And anyway, hope you like this little talk about the poetry of Robert Frost. We'll be back, like I said, with his poem Directive in the next Robert Frost episode, which will probably be 2 episodes hence. And in the meantime, read harder.